In the heart of the city, nestled between glass towers and traffic noise, stood an old apartment complex that had somehow escaped the grip of modernization. The building wasn't famous, nor was it entirely forgotten. It was simply ignored, like a story too strange to retell. People came and went, living short chapters of their lives inside its dusty halls, never staying too long. But there was one thing that remained constant: a rooftop door. It was heavy, rusted, and locked, with a thick chain and 3 industrial padlocks. No one used it. No one questioned it. Tenants passed it on their way to hang laundry or smoke under the stars, always stepping lightly near it, always avoiding eye contact with the handle. But everyone had heard something, a low scrape, a whisper, like wind, and sometimes the feeling that someone stood just on the other side. Management never explained it. The maintenance crew was instructed never to touch it, and if you pressed them for answers, they'd only say one thing: it's not supposed to be opened, ever. That silence lasted for decades, until, in the winter of 2023, a power outage caused the building's security system to fail. A curious, new tenant named Ria Alvarez, who had just moved into Unit 7B, decided to explore the darkened stairwells. She was the first to reach the rooftop in over 34 years, and the first to hear knocking from the inside. Ria Alvarez wasn't superstitious. She had grown up in downtown Chicago, lived through sirens and shadows, and never once believed in ghosts. When she relocated to Riverside Heights, she was simply looking for quiet. The apartment was nothing special: peeling paint, creaky floors, neighbors who mostly kept to themselves, but it had one thing she needed: distance. Ria was recovering, not from an injury, but something far harder to explain: a panic attack that lasted months, as her therapist once put it. Her journalism career had taken a sharp dive after she published a controversial expose involving a local cult and police corruption. The fallout was brutal. She received threats, her social media was torn apart, and eventually she left the newsroom for good. Riverside Heights was meant to be a fresh start. She took freelance gigs, avoided attention, and adopted a stray cat she named Edison. Most nights, the building was quiet, a little too quiet. She noticed small oddities. The hallway lights on the 7th floor flickered constantly, but never went out. The elevator stopped on the 5th floor, even when no buttons were pressed. And most notably, the rooftop door, just a flight above her unit, was always locked, secured with thick, age-worn chains and signs that simply read, "Do not enter, maintenance only." One night, after a week of steady snowfall, the power went out. The hum of the building died, plunging everything into a silent, frozen stillness. Ria lit candles and wrapped herself in a blanket, waiting for updates. Her phone had no signal. Even Edison, usually so energetic, curled up and stared at the front door as if sensing something beyond it. But it was the cold draft that got her attention. Not from her windows, they were sealed. The wind was coming from above. Curious, Ria grabbed her flashlight and stepped into the stairwell. Everything was darker than it should have been. Each step echoed unnaturally, as if the walls were listening. By the time she reached the rooftop level, her breath had turned visible in the freezing air, and there it was again, the door. Only this time, one of the padlocks was missing. A single lock dangled uselessly. The chain looked disturbed. As she stepped closer, Ria noticed scratch marks on the doorframe, long and erratic, like someone had tried to claw their way out. She reached for the lock without thinking. Then knock knock knock. 3 sharp thuds from the other side. Ria froze. Every instinct told her to run, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "Hello." There was no answer. She backed away, heart pounding. Just as she turned to leave, her light flickered, and in that brief sputter, she saw it. A faint handprint smeared on the inside of the glass window at the top of the door, too high for any normal person to reach. She raced downstairs, locked her door, and sat in silence. When the power came back 3 hours later, the hallway lights on the 7th floor were steady. The rooftop door had all 3 locks again. She thought she imagined it until she reviewed her phone's voice memo app. She had unknowingly been recording the entire time. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a voice whispered, low and shaking, "Please, don't leave me here again." The next morning, Ria sat at her small kitchen table with a mug of black coffee growing cold in her hands. The voice recording played on loop in her head. "Please, don't leave me here again." She didn't remember hearing that line in the moment, but it was undeniably there. The voice was raspy, like someone dehydrated or choked by years of silence. Edison paced along the windowsill, his fur puffed out, tail twitching. Ria, who had spent years debunking paranormal nonsense for newspapers, suddenly found herself afraid of a hallway in her own building. She made her first real move in days. She started asking questions. Mrs. Newberry, the old woman in 6C, was the only tenant who'd lived in the building since the late 80s. Ria brought her cookies and sat awkwardly on her flowery couch, letting the conversation meander until she finally asked, "What's the deal with the rooftop door?" Mrs. Newberry stiffened. Her soft expression faltered for the first time. "Best to leave that alone, dear," she said flatly. "That part of the building was sealed after an incident. Long before you got here, long before most of us. Some things are better off forgotten," Ria gently pressed. "What kind of incident?" Mrs. Newberry leaned in, her voice low and fragile. "There was a boy used to live here, Timothy Crane. He was troubled, said he could hear things in the walls, said the rooftop was where they came from. He disappeared one winter night. Gone, they say he went mad and jumped." But she trailed off, looking toward the ceiling. "They never found a body, just the door wide open, and claw marks on the inside." That night, Ria couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled, and her mind raced. At 3:14 a.m., she grabbed her notebook and flashlight again. Edison meowed loudly, pacing by the door as if begging her not to go, but she went. The rooftop level looked unchanged. 3 padlocks, a heavy chain, and that same feeling, like the air up there didn't belong to this world. She stared at the door for a long time before pressing her hand gently against it. Cold, still, silent. And then a breath, right by her ear. She spun around. No one, nothing. But when she looked back at the door, her stomach turned. The handprint was back. This time, it was fresh, wet, as though someone had just placed it there from the inside. The days that followed twisted slowly. She started hearing scratching sounds in her ceiling, not rodents' fingernails. She asked the super to check, but he shrugged. "No roof access," he said quickly. "Orders from the owners." Then came the notes. Slips of paper slid under her door at night. At first, she thought they were junk mail, but they weren't printed. They were handwritten. "Door remembers, stop asking questions, you'll let it out." No one in the building admitted to them. Even the mailman claimed ignorance. By the third night, she set up her camera and old DSLR from her reporting days directly at her door. What she captured shook her more than the voice memo. At 2:46 a.m., the hallway light flickered. A figure appeared, small, pale, thin. It stood at her door, just standing, then crouched. It slipped something under and vanished. When she paused the footage on its face, it wasn't a child. It had no eyes. Determined to uncover the truth, Ria visited the city's property archives. Riverside Heights, she learned, had been built over an orphanage that closed mysteriously in 1971 after internal violations and patient disappearances. The rooftop had once held a therapy observatory, used for isolating troubled children for correctional reflection. One document, half-burned and stuck between 2 folders, was a behavioral report for Timothy Crane, age 10. The notes included phrases like, "continues to speak to the ceiling, claims he is being watched, tried to climb the rooftop wall, found biting himself, locked in observation room for safety." At the bottom, in red ink, "do not open the door after nightfall." Ria returned home that evening, unable to shake the feeling of being followed. She hadn't told anyone where she was going, but when she entered her unit, she found her apartment in perfect order except one thing. Her notebook was missing, the one with her recordings, notes, and sketches of the door. Only a single page was left on her kitchen counter. Her own handwriting, but it had been altered. "The door is not locked to keep us out. It's locked to keep him in." The rooftop scratching grew louder each night. Now it wasn't only scratches, it was sobbing, sometimes laughter, sometimes both at once. She played the voice memo again, listening deeper this time, using audio software to isolate frequencies. In the background of the whisper, she caught something faint, too low to hear clearly at first, but with headphones on and volume turned up, it came through, a boy's voice, giggling. "They forgot me, but I remember her now." She dropped the headphones, heart pounding. Edison hissed, staring at the ceiling. That night, the light in her hallway turned red. It was the 5th night. Ria hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Her eyes were sunken, her thoughts scattered like broken glass. Edison wouldn't leave the corner beneath the bookshelf. Even the building felt different, like it was holding its breath. The hallway outside her apartment now hummed faintly, an electrical buzz she couldn't explain. Red light still poured from the overhead fixture on the 7th floor. Despite there being no red bulbs in the building, she knew she was being watched. But worse, she knew she was being remembered. At exactly 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown caller, no name. She didn't want to answer, but she did. There was nothing but static at first, Then a voice, clear and small. "You opened it, Ria." Her hand trembled. "You brought me back." Click. The call ended. The screen froze. When it finally rebooted, her lock screen had changed. It wasn't her usual cityscape wallpaper. It was a photo, grainy, dim, the rooftop door wide open. She should have run, should have called someone, packed a bag, left the building behind, but she couldn't. The pull was too strong. Not curiosity anymore. As if she had disturbed something ancient, something that never wanted to be found again. She picked up her camera, flashlight, and Edison, though the cat squirmed violently in her arms and made her way up. The red light grew stronger. The hallway was deathly quiet. As she reached the final flight, the stairwell air grew sharp, metallic, like old blood. The rooftop door stood before her, unchained, unlocked, slightly ajar. There was no wind tonight, no power outage, no reason at all for the door to be open. Yet it was. She paused at the threshold, flashlight trembling in her hand. She clicked it on. Nothing but rooftop tar paper and the rusted edge of the city. Skyline beyond. She stepped outside. The air was too still, and then the door slammed behind her. She turned. The handle was gone. The entire door now appeared as if it had melted into the wall. A flat, seamless surface, no way back. Suddenly, from the far corner of the rooftop, came movement. Something was rising, slowly, awkwardly, like it had forgotten how to use its limbs. And then she saw it. A boy no older than 10, gaunt, pale, his face smeared in soot. His mouth was stitched into a sick grin, his eyes completely black. He pointed at her and whispered, "Now you'll stay too." The ground below began to shift. She looked down, realizing she wasn't standing on tar paper. It was covered in hundreds of small, overlapping child-sized handprints, pressed into the surface like dried clay. As if others had been here. As if others had been trapped. The rooftop began to sink. Not physically, but perceptually, like gravity had flipped, like she was being pulled down into something beneath the rooftop, into whatever space Timothy Crane had disappeared into. She ran. The edges of the roof warped, stretching away. There were no stairs, no doors, only the boy watching her, smiling. As the sky turned black, he whispered again, "We remember everyone who opens the door." Then, he disappeared, folding inward like smoke, and Ria fell, not physically, but something in her mind did. Like a thread had snapped, and silence rushed in. When she opened her eyes, it was morning. She was back in her apartment. Everything looked normal. No red light, no handprints. Edison sat calmly, licking his paw. She laughed nervously, then opened her fridge to get water. That's when she saw it. All 3 padlocks were sitting neatly on her kitchen counter, and behind her, carved into her wooden floor, were the words, "Now it's your turn to keep it closed." Days passed. The rooftop door was never mentioned again. No one in the building acknowledged the red light, the sounds, or the icy draft. When Ria asked the super about the rooftop access, he simply replied, "There's no way up. There hasn't been for years." Her camera footage was corrupted, her notes gone. Even the city records she'd copied were no longer in her files. It was as if the building had taken everything back. Everything except the memory. She stopped writing. She stopped investigating. For the first time in her life, Ria Alvarez let the story die. But sometimes, she would catch herself staring too long at her ceiling, listening, not for voices or whispers, but for the silence between them. That strange, stretched quiet that feels like breath held too long. The scratches stopped. The hallway, light flickered again, but in the normal, faulty way old buildings tend to behave. Edison returned to his playful self, and yet Ria always kept her hallway door double locked, and the chain drawn tight. She still had the padlocks. 3 of them. She placed them in a drawer, but they never stayed put. No matter how often she moved them, she'd always find one on her windowsill, one under her pillow, one on the doormat. She didn't question it anymore, because some doors, once touched, never really close. And though she never spoke of that night again, every time Ria passed a locked door anywhere in any building, she couldn't help but wonder what might still be knocking, quietly, patiently, just on the other side.